Hey YouTube, this is Zane. Just wanted to do a quick video tonight on a very popular topic that's tested on the ACT math section, and that is averages. So without further ado, let's get started talking about averages. A lot of you probably have been dealing with averages since you were very young. If I remember right, I was probably introduced to them probably in like third grade or something like that. So it's a topic you're probably very familiar with. But the ACT knows that you're familiar with it, and so they will try to trick you whenever they ask about averages on the test. So I'm going to give you an example problem. We'll work it together, and we'll explain maybe some shortcuts, some tips that can help you out with it. So let's come up with a simple example. Let's say that Jimmy is selling lemonade out in front of his house. And he's been selling lemonade for the past 4 days. So let's say on day 1, he sold 25 lemonades to the local kids and passersby. Let's say on day 2, he sold 37 lemonades. Let's say on day 3 it was a little bit colder and rainy, so let's say he only sold 11. And on day 4, he sold 17. So just coming up with these numbers randomly. In and of themselves, they don't really hold any significance. So back in the third grade or whatever, you were probably taught to calculate averages by adding up the numbers you're interested in, like so, and then dividing by how many numbers there are in the data set, which there are 4. So I've got my scientific calculator handy right here, so I'm going to enter these in. So 25 plus 37 plus 11 plus 17. So the numerator, the sum of those numbers is equal to 90. So 90 divided by 4 gets me an average of 22.5 lemonades sold per day. Okay, that's simple enough. But as mentioned earlier, the ACT knows that you know how to do that. So they don't really care if you're able to do it on the test. They're going to throw you a little bit more of a curveball. So let's say we come up with another problem. So sticking with the situation we had before, let's say Jimmy sold his lemonades according to the situation we gave you up before. But let's say that they want to know how many lemonades Jimmy needs to sell on the 5th day to maintain that average of 22.5 lemonades per day. So the way you set this up is as follows. So you know that you have 5 days, so at some point we're going to need to divide by 5. But the critical mistake that almost every student makes, they just cut it off at this point and say, okay, well, we know we're going to be divided by 5, so that out of the numbers they'll divide by 5. This is the wrong way to do it. It's wrong because you're missing that 5th data point that you need to calculate the average for 5 days. So we'll represent that as an X, since we don't know how many lemonades he needs to sell. Now we know that taking that average should get us the average we're trying to maintain of 22.5 lemonades. So what began as a pretty straightforward average problem has now turned into a solve for X problem. So we're just going to use simple algebra to get that. So I'm going to assume that all of you know your algebra pretty well. So to get X by itself, first thing we got to do is get this 5 out of the way. So by timesing both sides by 5, we'll be well on our way. So timesing 22.5 by 5 gets me 112.5, and we still have our sum of numbers up here. So since we already calculated what all these numbers were added up together up here, they all turned out to be 90. On this side, we're left with 90 plus X gets you 112.5. So when we minus our 90 away to get X by itself, we're going to end up with 22.5. So as you can see, pretty straightforward. We've solved for x, which was our missing data point, aka the number of lemonades that Jimmy needs to sell on the 5th day to maintain his average. pretty easy. Notice the number of lemonades he needs to sell is equal to the average we calculated up here for the 4 days. This is not a coincidence. Let me try and display this to you another way, on a number line. Okay, so let's say this number line represents the number of lemonades for each of the days that he is selling lemonade. So the first day he sold 25. Okay, well, on the next day he sold about 37. That's a little bit further along the number line. Third day he sold about 11, so right there about. And on the last day he sold 17. Now the average of those equaled 22.5, so probably somewhere right here. Okay, so we've got a data set, and let's say we pose the same question: how many lemonades does he need to sell on the 5th day to maintain that average? Well, it's not very difficult to see that he needs to sell the average number to maintain that average. I mean, if you're trying to maintain this average on this number line, it can't be anything over here, because that'd pull this average this way. Can't be anything over here, because then it'd pull that average down a little bit this way. So the 5th and final lemonade sale day has to make money off of exactly the average to keep the average where it's at. So now that we've gone through this, it probably seems like a really easy problem, almost too easy, but a lot of people are going to get that wrong because they don't understand that concept, that that average needs to stay where it's at for it to equal what the average was before. I hope that helps. That is pretty much as hard as the ACT can test you on averages. So that wraps it up for tonight as far as what I wanted to talk about. So let me just get out of the screen share. So thanks for watching tonight. I hope that helps. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us through our YouTube channel. We're going to try and pump a few more of these videos out maybe this week about ACT prep, just so all of you go-getters preparing for the ACT this summer can get ahead and maximize your score. So best of luck to you, and we hope to see you watching in the future. Thanks so much.